Worms. 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 Things gonna get wormy in here today. Lots of stuff about worms. Let's go. Da 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 do 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 do. Da 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 do do. All right. Da 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 do do do. Hey now. Da 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 do do. Mr. Kovacs class. It's Mr. Kovacs class.
You might learn a ton.
It's Mr. Kovacs class.
He's interested too.
It's Mr. Kovacs class.
And he's super cool.
It's Mr. Kovacs class. Hey, let's spend the rest of the class talking about worms. All right, for your bell ringer today, of course, we're talking about worms. This is just a picture of a worm. Okay, some things you might remember, hopefully, is that the front end of the worm is the anterior, and the back end of the worm is called the posterior. And you can always tell the anterior from the posterior because of where the clitellum is. The clitellum is always closer to the anterior, towards the front. So here's where the old mouth is, right up at the front. And at the very end, of course, that's where the anus is. That's where excrement comes out. Usually on worms like this guy's kind of twisted, but the darker pigment, that's the dorsal or the back of the worm. And you can see that he's kind of twisted around, probably because he's getting yanked out of the ground. All right. And so the ventral, and they do usually crawl around with ventral side down, dorsal side up, and their main artery blood vessel goes along the back, the dorsal blood vessel, and then their main nerve goes along the front. It's ventral. And then of course, remember up here, this is where they have, mouth and esophagus, and then they do have a brain and a nervous system. They have reproductive organs, which are all found right up here near the front of the head. And then they have that kind of like the esophagus that goes to a two-part stomach, the crop and the gizzard. And then of course they swallow, and most of this is intestine. And then out, right? So these are our friends the worms. Today, if you have lab today, we're gonna start using them in lab. And for our regular class today, we're gonna study a little bit more about earthworm behavior. All right, so let's do today's wormy bell ringer.